normally meet, but not on a holiday.
I
And
won't-
not on a.
I won't be available to,
Yeah,
so, and then the liaison transition is happening.
Now,
Trying to get that solidified, so, I think the 5th is kind of out if we're relying on me to be here, because I won't be here.
yeah, we're used to sloppy transitions.
I know, well, we've been on it for a while, so we came up with some
Hey, we
timelines.
did the same thing when we went
Yeah.
from Gus to Steven, and same from Steven to Mark. I mean, you know,
yeah, it's like,
it's difficult.
one week he goes, you
It
look
is
at me,
different, yeah.
meeting, I said, no, he said, where you going tonight, and tomorrow, next month, you start liaison, like. So I didn't want to put her in that situation, so.
Yeah, liaison is translation is we're gonna pull your fingernails out very slowly.
Yeah, so yes, this is. Uh, uh, Next month, she's liaison.
Okay, so that's the
I'm
formal,
like,
that's the formal turn time.
That's, yes, so,
Critical that we have the meeting on a day when you can be here.
Well, it's critical for her to be here on the day we have the meeting, but that's, that's up to her.
so,
And she's already got something else aligned, that's-
Yeah, I already put in for that. week
then
off.
somebody else will have to take over. But we have other people. I mean,
Well, I
it's
do
not,
it.
it's not gonna be void of people next month,
Yeah.
right? So,
I could do it.
yes, we need to look at this from the right viewpoint, to understand what's going on.
Right, and what do we want to accomplish at that meeting, and.
True.
Is having it the day after the holiday.
Okay, so
I
I'm
just- I
assuming
would
we
say
have a
fit this
quorum.
out.
I'm assuming we have a quorum, so that means we can start the meeting, and meeting's beginning now. So, other than preparing for that, were you setting up anything?
No, that's it.
Okay. I don't know if we have enough for an hour or 2 hours, but we'll go through until we run out of things to talk about, and then we'll go quick. Items on the agenda. Has everyone had a chance to read through the agenda?
Yeah.
Okay,
Should we do introductions, since we have,
yeah, we'll do that in a minute. The items I want to talk about, whether they're fitting into this particular scheme or not of the agenda with, I wanted to discuss, it's an item already that the Board of County Commissioners has discussed, and that's what to do about those two presentations to the, what were they, what was the technical term for when you were reviewing people for the,
Alternative options.
yeah, for the eco loop? There was two, what do you call those? What are RFPs or what are they?
No, there's no RFPs.
Okay.
It was just the county policies that we're talking about.
Proposals, there was
Right.
proposals, okay. And then it's already a done deal as far as the commission is concerned, but I think, I think that miss what we really needed to be discussed on that, and I want to rediscuss that tonight for a few minutes. And then we need to go through the presentation, and we need to go through the report itself. Make sure that everyone's happy with what the report is on the report. So, I don't know how this was designed to.
well, so my thought process is this, is that that we wanted to, first of all, was my understanding it was a special commission meeting that they held to discuss the comp plan policy and other items related to Ecoloop.
Yes.
So it'd be really helpful if everybody watched the meeting prior to having the deeper discussion. So my thought was this, is knowing that we initially wanted to put it on this agenda, the full discussion of the comp plan policy on burning plastics. But knowing that we have to reschedule the meeting, that's kind of why I grouped it together like this. It's important, Dave wanted to revisit the topic and invite Amanda Waddle. And it coincides with our work plan, so we definitely want to do that deep dive from what I'm hearing. But that's why I kind of put all of those together under topics and
Right.
schedules, just want to make
Yeah,
sure.
no, it is on there, and there's,
Yeah.
I'll briefly let everyone know why I want to discuss this further, okay, so that you have an idea of what it's all about. Then we can look at the, either watch the meeting, which is fine, but I don't think that's critical to what I want to discuss, because I think it's a point that's been completely missed, even though we touched on it in the actual meeting we've had, way back when, 2018, that we had the original meeting.
There were 2 meetings on the topic, one last year, one earlier this year.
Okay, yeah, that's the final review there. Okay, so we've got that, everyone accept the agenda, anyone else have, excuse me, I'm having trouble hearing my one ear is kind of cloudy, so I hear everything reverberating against my eardrum. Does anyone else have anything to add to the agenda? Okay, no, okay, agenda is accepted. So we have new people online?
Yeah, we have, Chris.
Okay, we're gonna start out in here and we'll go around the room from here and everyone will introduce themselves, including our guests and our APD members that are present. My name is David Moritz. I'm vice chair and our esteemed chair. Nisha Anderson is out of this country right now, visiting a friend in Southeast Asia.
My name is George Papati, and I've been on EPAC for quite a long time, 2013 or 14. And it's been wonderful. And I don't know what else to say. I was a biologist for 30 plus years at the university, 2 different universities.
Hi, Christopher. My name is Jay Rosenbeck. I've just finished my first year as of tonight on the committee. I'm an old retired professor from the University of Florida, used to be a chair. My field was rehabilitation science, so I know the science parts of or the method parts of the things we talk about here. It's nice to meet you.
My name is Summer Waters. I'm the liaison, so I actually work for the county. I'm transitioning. You'll meet Mark here, who's the outgoing liaison, who will also still be in the meetings, I assume.
You're so wrong.
That's what I told Mark.
You don't say when you assume what happens.
That's right. That's right. Well, welcome aboard, Chris, and congratulations on your pre-selection. The board will make that final next Tuesday. I'm the Natural Resource Program Manager at Alachua EPD. I've been liaison for the last 3 years. And been transitioning out now to where I'll periodically attend, typically via Zoom, but that yes, as Summer indicated, she'll be taking over as liaison but welcome aboard and Gus, you want to go ahead and
Sure, I'm Gus Olmos, I'm the solid waste director for Alachua County. And I used to be the EPAC liaison for many years.
Bill, you want to?
I'm just a sit-in guest and I'm a wildlife biologist, still at work.
Thank you.
What about you, Chris? You got something you want to talk about?
I don't want to talk about anything, but I will introduce myself. So yeah, my name is Christopher Stoney. It's really great to meet all of you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this. I'm from Crystal River, Florida. That's where I was born and raised, and I chose Gainesville as my home, my decided upon home, I guess. Came here in 2008. Went to school at Santa Fe, moved out west, lived in Seattle, lived in San Francisco, lived in Orlando, and then my wife and I decided to buy a home in the only place that we felt truly at home, which was back here in Gainesville. I live on the northwest side of town, really close to Devil's Mill Hopper. Been an environmentalist for most of my life, and it's just something that I'm very, passionate about and that I want to get more involved in locally. So this very much appealed to me, and yeah, it's don't know what to expect, but I'm very honored and excited for what we get to work on and what we can do. So thank you all very, very much.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris, and welcome to EPAC. And I used to live up by the northwest side, right next to Devil's Mill Hopper too, so in that neighborhood well. And yeah, Gainesville is home for a lot of us. I mean, I moved here. I moved here. It's like 30 years ago, maybe a couple of years, 32, something like that, and been my home ever since. So. Okay, introductions out of the way. I think we've got the July 4th thing worked out.
No, we don't.
We don't?
But that is the topic on the agenda, so let's go ahead and move.
Okay,
to
that's the first
agenda.
topic.
Yeah.
Yep. Discussion on that? Anyone have any ideas of what to do on that other than doing it on the 5th?
My recommendation would be, based on the attendance tonight, would be to cancel.
Well, I don't want to cancel the meeting. Okay, that's just a given. We don't. I mean, if we just have it, even if it turns out to be just an online meeting, and you send this out, saying people aren't going to be around, but we're going to start the meeting, we'll do that. I don't want to, and I prefer that we actually meet if possible and get as many people, the new people plus the existing people here.
Yeah.
Now, if you're not comfortable with the 5th date, if we could move it to, some other day later in the same week, is the most preferable to me.
Right.
And, and then for the Monday or Wednesday of the following week, but
Sure, it's not about the date for me, actually, I'm happy to accommodate whichever date if you
Yeah.
wanna move it. It's just, I kind of put all these things together because we had discussed adding this, deep dive into the comp plan policy, 1.2.5, the burning of plastics in July, and so I just wanted to have enough members present to really have a good, robust discussion on it.
Right. that's-
And then the other thing is, if members aren't showing up, then it's my understanding that you're only supposed to miss so many meetings.
Right.
And so if we're scheduling a meeting when a lot of people are gone, we're kind of dinging those other members
I
unnecessarily.
don't want to cancel the meeting, okay? That's,
get
that's
that.
the major point right there, okay? And
I get that.
I
get
just,
that.
I
Let's
think it's a
hear
really
from-
bad policy.
Let's hear from some of the other members.
Sure.
I'd like to be present. Maybe it's a waste of resources for whatever reason, but I guess I like to be involved in every opportunity that I possibly can, even if it's diluted by, it's less effective. Someone can bring, if we can come up with salient discussions, and if we have nothing to talk about, then I could see. But if we can convince ourselves that we have some real things that a few individuals can help push along, make some progress, and I think it's worthwhile.
Well, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's good.
The 4th is out because it conflicts with the commission meeting.
Because it's a holiday, the July 4th.
I'm sorry, the 11th.
Oh, the 11th, I think we can still do the 11th, we have it here, I would just need to check and see if we have any items on the July meeting that we need to be present for. Occasionally, EPAC or, EPD staff has items on a commission meeting and then we need to be there to present.
Yes,
So that can be a little tricky, but I don't.
I'm
I
okay
don't think
with
we have anything on the 11th.
I'm okay with any day that week, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
Okay. Okay, so then my recommendation would be if we do go ahead and reschedule it, and we think it's like, if we can find out what the attendance is gonna be like. I would just think with it is as adamant as you were, David, about wanting to have a robust discussion. On this solid waste policy, that we would wanna hold it when we had.
I don't think we're gonna have it then, no matter what we do.
Okay, okay,
But if we, and I
There
think
we go.
we'll even have less of a chance of having a robust discussion if we skip a month.
yeah,
If we
yeah.
come back in, it's gonna be, oh.
Who's EPAC? What's that?
Yeah, you spend the whole,
Yeah.
that whole next meeting, just kind of catching up on where things were.
Mhm.
So I don't want to skip a meeting. And we come once a month, right? I mean, that's not too much, I don't think it's being evil to request people to come once a month and, and discuss.
No, that's not what I'm
Obviously.
saying at all. I mean, I think, kind of what you're getting at, like, what everybody's kind of saying, if we can come up with a good agenda
Mhm.
for that time, I mean, that's kind
I
of
can
gonna
do
block
that.
up your
I can do
these
that.
together, some things to talk about.
Yeah.
Understanding that, and then I would just like to find out, before we make it official, who all is going to be there, who's gonna be.
Let's stop worrying about who's going to be there. Let's worry about what we put on the agenda, okay? I don't think worrying about who comes to a meeting is something that we get to do.
Actually, having a quorum is an important
It is
part of
important,
this
but,
process, yeah.
but we can't let that be determined. Okay, do we think we can have a quorum? No, okay, we're not gonna meet next month. And then the next month comes, do we think we can have a quorum? Well,
Yeah.
probably not, because we even had less interest last month, so let's not have next month. Well, let's
Yeah.
have a meeting back in 1935 or 2035,
I think what's actually gonna happen, David, is that we're gonna move away from, but we're gonna move toward, you need to be in person at the meetings, everybody does.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm all for that now.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
kind of more what's gonna happen. Yeah, I'm
Absolutely.
definitely not suggesting by any means that.
I move we have the meeting on July the 11th.
Well, I don't want it on a
want to vote
Tuesday.
on it, So,
I think we need to move it on it. Yeah,
Oh, I thought you were saying.
I thought we did
Isn't
too.
it 11?
yeah, the 11th would be a bad day, because that's the same day that the board meets.
If you're online, it doesn't count as a quorum. That's why the other thing that's going on, I just kind of, just kind of wanted to touch base with, Steve, our director, to find out what the other committees are doing. And that's when he recommended if people aren't gonna be there, as a courtesy to your fellow members, you wanna schedule it when people can be there.
Okay, you seem to be very adamant and refuse to move on from this point, so I'll tell you what.
We haven't resolved it yet.
No, I'll tell you what, we're gonna drop that point. I'll work it out with Steve and we'll figure out what to do then, and we can work it out after the meeting and in between, because otherwise we're gonna spend this whole meeting arguing about this. You're not gonna let us move on.
I'm not trying to be argumentative, David.
I know you're not, but you just disagree with me and you're refusing to go along with what I, as the current chair of this meeting, am saying what we should be doing, okay? If you don't want to, if you don't want to go along with that, then let's let it drop. I think, that's the only thing I can do. I've got to move the meeting forward. We have other things to discuss.
There's another possible way of looking at this.
Yeah,
The new members, we have how many new members?
Four. Yeah.
If they don't come, but that they're in the Zoom mode,
mhm.
we can provide them, there's gonna be a certain amount of time where we have to get them accustomed to, give them background information, get them accustomed. And during one of these low quorum, non-quorum situations, this can be a catch-up time when we're filling, if there is possibly information we could provide them, do this, do that, or this is what we do.
It's a great point, George.
And so the meetings don't have to be the kind of productive meetings we would like with a quorum to vote on stuff. But we can use that time when there's not enough people for a practical quorum to educate the new members about stuff they're gonna need to, is that?
Yeah,
make sense?
that's why I have new member onboarding. That's kind of why I grouped all of these together. And my intention was to discuss the upcoming meetings in that context. So, right, that's an excellent solution to what we're talking about. If we're not gonna have so many of our current members here and we want to go to an online version and do it the following week, then what I'm hearing is go ahead and do the new member onboarding that time and then move the review of the solid waste policy onto the August meeting.
I have a question. Can we just start as of now being all meetings have to be in person?
I would have to look into that.
Okay,
Yeah.
Well, let me interject.
because that's been killing us for a couple of months now.
Yeah.
I don't. The county's supportive of the hybrid approach because they recognize for various reasons. COVID, and as well as and it's more amenable for people to be able to do both. Now, back to much I respect what you're saying, David, is like, I don't know that you necessarily have to have a quorum to talk about the policy.
Oh, we don't.
You don't. And so I'm like, if Dave's the only one here and everybody else is on, Zoom, that's fine. Only if there's something that you want to present to the
Yeah.
board is the only time when you want to have that. So
Right.
I think in light of it's like, if you say only physical, presence, yeah, I would fear that EPAC would basically dissolve.
Okay,
And so that's why, that's all
I
I'm
think that's,
thinking.
no, I gotta disagree up on that one, Mark. I think EPAC's dissolving because we're not in meeting together and therefore able to pass resolutions that we can, that's just what gives EPAC its reason for being. Okay, and we've been, how long, how many years?
84.
I've been coming for 10 years,
Right.
and George, you've been here almost that long, right?
Yeah, you were here before me.
Well, we've never had trouble getting EPAC together, and that was long before we started having
No.
online meetings.
No, and I shouldn't say dissolve. I think where you run the risk that, because technically the advisory, only required to meet quarterly. And there are a lot of the 30-odd committees that do that. I mean, and that's all they have, their members are having.
Are you recommending that the
No,
environment
no.
only needs to be looked at once every 3 months?
No, I think you're meeting monthly is the way to go. I think but I think where providing, in people that, live out, Chris, you're in Newberry. I mean, so I don't, that's right, you're in the Northwest, but I think providing the opportunity, whether we had COVID or not, just to have the hybrid version.
I like that. I like it as an opportunity, but at the same time, there has to be a certain point at which people understand they need to be here to meet.
You're right, for quorum purposes, you're right. I think that's gonna have. It'll be the situation and so. So you kind of have to pick and choose which topics you want to go to the board, so.
Well, I think kind of the way it seems like a lot of the other meetings are going is it's like you show up in person and you have the Zoom there for an exception for the exceptions or whatnot. But right, no, that was kind of the reason, David, why I wanted to make sure that we fully addressed your concerns about the comp plan policy, because you did in your email kind of point out that it was a little unclear what EPAC's official stance was on it because we didn't have the resolution
Exactly.
and all of that.
And
Yes. So that's why
I also have had a book of emails that went back and forth between, me and other people about this, not EPAC members, but, and I've come up with some ideas in terms of things that really need to be discussed in terms of what we were looking at and how we were looking at it, so.
Yeah, so I'm really not trying to forestall that. What I'm trying, what my intention was for grouping these things together was to discuss, yes, okay, if we want to keep the meeting, then good, fine, we can do that. I like the suggestion that the new member onboarding happen at that July meeting so that we can make sure that we give everybody time and warning and have a good, robust discussion and potentially pass a resolution so that it's not confusing if there's.
So you're recommending that we drop, not have a meeting in July?
No, I was just, what I just said was that, if everybody wants to have the meeting in July, I would take, the recommendation that we do the new member onboarding, is what I'm calling it, what you're saying, we introduce the new member,
Okay,
and then.
this point in this meeting is not the time to discuss what we do next meeting. That's usually at the end of the meeting. Okay, so I'd rather not start, see, we've already kind of blown, if you will, this meeting start, because we dig right in, go right through the agenda, okay? But you're not allowing us to move on with the meeting and allowing me to say, here's the flow and let's go through it. You're saying, I'm gonna stop it right now. We gotta discuss this in this order. We're not gonna go on until we get next month worked out. And we don't know if we're gonna have enough people. That's all stuff we wait until next month to work out, okay?
Well, typically I would put this at the end of the agenda, but we wanted to be respectful of Gus's time, and Gus was here specifically to talk about to answer questions that you might have about the comp plan policy and to make sure that he's available for the date that we.
Okay, let's pick a day then for that. I'm recommending the 5th. I'll go with any date that the majority, says that they prefer it to be on instead of the 5th. That's fine. It's not important to me. It's only important to me that we have a meeting and as close to the 4th as possible.
So the 11th was brought up?
The 11th was brought up.
And that's the day of the county commission meeting?
I think we're gonna be fine. We don't have any, I was just looking at Mark, I don't think we
No.
have anything on there. Yeah, we don't have anything going to the commission, so we'll.
I don't even know that there is there's only one board meeting in July. I don't even think it's on. Huh?
It's a big one.
It's a big one, yeah. So,
Is it likely then to have an evening part to it?
yeah, probably.
Okay, I tell you what, I've always avoided doing things on the second Tuesday. If we had to
Right.
cancel the first Tuesday for exactly the reason that, it might be something that we want to go. If there's been so many environmental issues in the county that, have come up on a board meeting and
How about the 10th?
one of those evening meetings. Well, is there a reason to move it anywhere farther out from the 5th? Again, if it's a vacation day for you and you don't want to be here for it, I have, no problem moving it after.
I'm gone that entire week, yeah.
Okay, well, that's different then. I should have said that right off the bat.
She did.
I didn't hear her say that. I didn't hear her say it that way.
So the 10th, we could do a Monday, I don't see why not. We could do the 10th or we could do a Monday or a Wednesday or any other day that week after the July 4th week, right, Mark?
Christopher, you're
need to
getting
get
a
that
good
out.
introduction to how we solve problems.
Chris is like, what the heck?
Yeah, you look away boards always do things, in a longer fashion.
It's a more contentious meeting than usually.
Yeah,
yeah.
Don't worry.
Normally, and I understand, normally I would have just put this at the end as housekeeping, but I
Okay.
again wanted to be respectful of Gus's.
Can I
time.
ask you in the future, when you have a time conflict or you foresee a time conflict, have someone else lined up to take your place on the day where we are normally scheduled, or would be likely to want to schedule it? And we would be likely to want to schedule any meeting as soon to the original meeting as it can be. So usually within that week is when we would do it.
Okay.
So, that's just what's been done in the past. Gus, is familiar with having done that a million times and there's always someone around who can do it, more than happy to come in, I think, and sit with us for that day.
The
So,
10th would be fine with me.
I'm open to the fine with me.
10th is fine with me.
For any day.
so we'll do
How
it
about
for
the
the 10th.
10th?
Monday, July 10th.
Since we don't have a quorum, we voted anyway, we decided. Okay.
It's a work.
And so the topic of that meeting will be more focused on the new members and then our solid waste follow-up deep dive would be in the August meeting. Is that gonna be satisfactory?
We'll work on that at the end of the meeting.
Okay, okay.
I just want to go through an agenda in the normal order we do go through them.
Okay,
I thought you were saying something.
I was gonna just ask David, reflecting on, my first meeting,
Yeah,
I thought onboarded, I've never thought about that as a term.
yeah.
The onboarding part took about 4 minutes.
Well, I wasn't gonna, but yeah, it's just, Chris was the longest one we've had, so.
You know, what we can do though, since we're just starting up, you know, it'd be a first month after having submitted our work plan, you know, we can go through the work plan in some, you know, and
Yeah.
discuss, okay, everyone's aware of this, here's what we did in the last few years over, and here's what, you know, we see we'd like to do this year, and everyone can make recommendations.
And that's part of the reason why normally we don't notify the new, but since it's a foregone conclusion that the 4 people that are gonna be selected are gonna be selected next week, that's why I went ahead and send it out.
Yeah,
The work plan now so they can see, you know, what's on their plate.
and this is very typical work plan, you know, going back at least 5 years, what we do.
So the object would be to have the meeting on the 10th and to have these folks introduce themselves, let's introduce them. You give them any instruction about how to behave as an OPEC member. And then we introduce them to the committee's activity by looking at the work plan.
Sounds good.
Yeah, that'd be one of the items that we deal with for sure. Probably should be the first of our items, what we do. Unless we have, unless we've decided we're gonna schedule, you know, a presentation for next month, which I don't think we're gonna do. Okay, I think by consensus, we've got that. That's the day for everyone.
Okay.
Okay. Next item was the solid waste follow-up in this review of comp plan policy 1.255. And that was the thing that everyone's saying we're gonna move until, you know, we can have a deep dive or whatever on. And it, you know, it might take us 2-3 months to get through it actually, but let me give you the gist of what, you know, I was discussion with, and we talked about inviting, who,
Amanda Waddle.
yeah, Amanda here.
Amanda.
And Amanda and I shared a lot of emails about this subject specifically, and I went back and reread, you know, everything about the presentations. And what concerns me, you know, sitting here today about those presentations is that they both recommended using, you know, I won't say a trivial amount, but, you know, a very, very small amount of plastic from the waste stream. And because plastic is prohibited, and this board actually made a resolution saying that we support, you know, the non-burning of plastic. You know, by anything going on the county supports. That was an important point. But I'm trying to remember exactly the things that we discussed that are important here in the emails. The item that came up that was important, again, that was the critical issue to keep in place. But my question is whether what these companies were doing through heat and pressure and whatever other engineering that they did on the material, did they convert the plastic to something other than plastic? Okay, and I think anyone reasonable looking at that would say it's possible. Yeah, I mean, you know, scientists might say that you know is something no longer plastic. It's been turned into something else, and it's been turned into a completely, maybe it's been turned into something that generally is not considered to be plastic or a result of the same processes. And I think then there's 2 things that can happen from that. Someone could sue the county and say, okay, well, you're saying we can't do this. You're not going to accept us into the eco loop because, you know, it violates your policy of burning plastic, but this isn't plastic and it's accepted in the field, you know, in the engineering field or in science that it's not plastic. And they bring up evidence to show that. Okay. Then the county's going to be 2 things going to happen. One, the county's going to be forced to accept them on those grounds, and may even lose some money because, you know, the court case and all of that. Okay. There's going to be a point somewhere down the road where we want to allow companies to burn plastic, because we're going to have a heck of a lot of it around. And given a proper procedure for burning it, and I don't think we've got that right now. I don't even think that, you know, the best of burning facilities can do that right now, waste disposal facilities. So I'm not for that. But I think, you know, 10, 20 years down the road, who's to say, you know, what's going to happen and what we're available. And if we're no longer making plastic from oil, we're no longer pumping oil, I see no problem at that time in allowing the burning of plastic to simply get it out of the environment faster than letting it try and, you know, destroy itself in, you know, over 200, 300 years in our environment, where we can't control where the toxins that are, you know, baked into that plastic will come out.
Can I interrupt for 1 second?
Yes, please do.
One of the things, one of the criteria that we could use. If a material, if plastic is burned or processed. And then becomes something that some legal arguments would say is not plastic and therefore shouldn't be regulated as plastic. One of the bottom lines could be that since we know plastics are endocrine mimickers, not all, but many, and certain compounds in plastics can lead to function of endocrine mimicry, then that is something, even if the material is no longer technically called plastic, but it has the impact of endocrine mimicry. I don't care what you call it, the bee's knees or anything, if the functions, if the dangers presented are there, then that is a deal breaker. So any material, no matter what the name that is attempted to be assigned to it, that cannot hide it or provide a means to be produced. The function, the damaging effects of plastic have to be monitored, even if the substance is no longer technically plastic.
Now, what if it doesn't have that characteristic nature anymore?
Well, to me, the thing that we have to worry about is not whether the material conforms to a name. Although there are lots of, if Bill Clinton can argue about what is or whatever.
Right.
You can get legal.
That goes back.
Yeah,
That's funny
you
too.
can really get, legal and get lost in the weeds. The most important thing is we have to decide what is objectionable specifically, molecularly, cell biology wise, about plastics. And what are the impacts on cell systems? And if the substance is no longer plastic, but still does those bad things, I don't care what it's called, it cannot be produced.
Gus,
See what I'm saying?
what's your opinion on that? Are those substances that they, the processes they were talking about when they were doing, the heavy, the heat and pressure and transformation of those to something else? I mean, that was at least.
So hopefully I can clarify some of the discussion here. So first thing, we currently don't have any proposals on the table. We received 3 proposals last year.
Yes.
We rejected 2, pick one, those 2 are gone. So we're not looking at anybody at this point.
Right.
So as far as Eco is concerned, we got one that we're working on, end of story. That being said, I'm hoping to get at least a couple more soon enough. My intent is to bring them to EPAC, to EDAC, to CCAC, just like I did 2 years ago. So at that point, we can get into the weeds of what exactly they're doing. Right now, they're not doing anything because there are no proposals to look at.
And we're grateful for that, actually.
As far as the policy, I know we kind of short call it burning plastic. That's not what the policy says. The policy says you're gonna use plastic and tires in a waste to energy plant, which we all know what that is, you burn it good, or as a fuel source. So I think it's what you're talking about. If you're a chemical recycler and you decompose the plastic and you create this syngas and you create anything but fuel, you're good to go.
Right.
Only if you create fuel, you're gonna be in trouble with the county policy.
Right.
So if you're creating more plastics, that's not out of compliance with the county policy. If you create whatever you wanna create, as long as it's not a fuel, because if you're using plastic as a fuel source, you're okay. However, just because you're in compliance, that doesn't mean we have to accept it. Because we own the eco loop, we're leasing land.
Right.
We get to choose whoever we lease land to. And so it's not just a matter of, you check the box, it's not like a land use condition. You check the box, you get to build, no. You check the box, Many people are gonna check that box, and the commissioners get to pick, I want this one, for whatever reason. Economics, environmental, climate change, there's a whole menu of things they're gonna look at in order how to pick who goes there next.
Okay.
So it's just not, that's just one of the many criteria they're gonna look at. So as far as, we being sued or stuff like that, not because it's not a box to check, that's just one of the many ones.
Okay.
So,
But now the question that I asked was somewhat different than that, okay? And I appreciate that answer because that is part of what I think we all need to discuss.
Right.
But in your knowledge of what their process was, okay, you may have had a chance to look at it a little more than we did in our meeting. What did they actually do? What did they? Yeah.
the company that we looked at last year, we were gonna create diesel fuel.
Mhm.
So they didn't meet the compound policy, that was pretty straightforward. Once you create syngas, which is just a raw material, you can do whatever you want, but obviously you wanna do something that's economically beneficial to them. And fuel is economically beneficial, so that's what they
Right.
chose to do. I'm assuming we may get some proposals where they're gonna use this syngas and create something that's not a fuel, because now they know that for past 5-0, they don't wanna change the policy, so they all know what the rules are, which are the same rules that were there last year, and they're all adjusting, tweaking, changing their proposals to submit something that's gonna get rejected.
Okay, and I think somewhere down the line, we have to look at that part of the policy and say, why are we doing that? Okay, there's two reasons why we initially came out and recommended to the board that they didn't allow the burning of plastic in a waste to energy, type in situation. The first one was because, we've all, we know that if we have any other attitude, what is it, what are the words we use, where you recycle, you reduce, recycle,
Reduce, reuse, recycle.
reduce, reuse, recycle, okay, and those are, the order is very important to have those. And this completely bypasses that, it's saying we're not gonna, it's considered recycled when you turned it into, whatever you're going to burn then and get energy from it. And we felt that that was a really bad idea because it promotes actually pumping more, oil and burning, essentially what will then create pollution. And that was the second part of it, okay? The argument could be made, and actually, Commissioner Byerly spoke on behalf of that, saying, well, there's processes now that you can put in place that would allow you to burn plastic that would filter out all of these toxins that go into the air, the dioxins and all there's several other 3-letter chemicals, names for them, PAS,
PFAs.
huh? Yeah, several.
Oh, what, like PFAS?
Yeah, so there's several other things that it creates that come out from that. So you want to prevent that from happening. And I don't think that the companies that do that right now do it sufficiently to protect us. But you have those two parts of that. One of them is the pollutants that'll actually be there that we need to protect the citizens from, and the other one being that this whole idea, it's a conceptual idea that we need to follow this policy, and if we allow it to be shortcut in that way, we're not getting rid of the real problem, which is the fact that we do everything with a burning of an energy source that is polluting and is climate changing. Okay, so there were, as I said, two sides of that. It's the same argument, really, to look at in two different ways. And at some point in time in the future, we're gonna have to allow, the burning of plastic in a proper procedure. What we didn't put into the policy was that concept that, that explains, why we have this particular policy in place. And because it doesn't do that, I think that policy is open for question in a court, whether we have to accept them, even if that policy is not the reason we're rejecting them, is another story. But I think we have to pin down exactly what we want here, is if it's possible to convert this ahead of time to something other than plastic. And then that plastic is the non-plastic is then used to convert to something that's for fuel. How are we to know? They might just say, oh, we're gonna take this intermediate, item, and we're gonna take it over here, and you're not gonna know what's going on, because that's part of our company, but we're not gonna burn it and turn it into energy in Alaska County.
So, David, are you suggesting then that we have a discussion which eventually might lead us to recommend to the county commission that they once again evaluate this policy. I'm just having a little trouble about figuring out exactly what our goal is.
We could be a bit fuzzy about it since there's absolutely nothing right now that we have to approve or disapprove or give a recommendation on, okay? So we can afford to be fuzzy at this point in time about what we're doing. For me, my primary goal or interest is that I don't want to see us burning plastic right now.
Yeah. Okay, good. I got that.
That's fundamental.
Yeah, okay, I got that. So. Against that background,
Mhm.
what are you suggesting that we,
Okay, I'm
To
suggesting
have
that because creating energy from anything, and we're gonna have a lot of this plastic around at some point in time, okay? That can be converted to energy. I think we should try and come up with a time or a situation under which it can be and is it advisable for the county to allow burning the plastics and converting into energy. Okay, I'd like to see us come up with what does it take for the county to say this is an acceptable thing to do. Okay, and that's not going to be for many years in the future. But if we don't have it as a policy, and people have something else saying, "Oh, we've already come up with a way to converting this to its non-being a plastic," because that's what I think that company was saying. It's no longer plastic. It's already been converted at the atomic level, you know, in the furnace to something else. And the fact that how we're using it that way doesn't mean anything, because even if they converted it to something else, that, you know, something was and used it in paper, and that was used to burn. Okay, we wouldn't know that until they took out of the county. That's not the concern. The concern is when does it actually get to the point when it's not something we want to stop? So that we would allow someone to use that process, you know, in the county. And I don't like the idea that we're going to stop someone from using this as a waste of energy, because creating energy is not in and of itself a bad thing. I mean, we're using all this energy that, you know, the monitors on energy, that even that clock over there is using energy. Probably is that a battery or plug-in? I don't know, but either way, there's all this energy that we're using. And so we have to find a way of supporting that. And I want to see us move from here into the however distant future it is in a fairly organized fashion. So I wanted to see that discussion come forward, and I wanted to say, is there anything in that policy that can get us in trouble? With Gus says, no, I don't, I'm not sure I agree with, he's looked at a lot more than I have over a lot longer period of time. But I want to know, is there, and I know there is, but I want to know at what point is it then that it's okay to burn plastic? You know, or can it be transitioned to something else? Should be wanting to stop that part of it as well.
One of the problems with everyone knows about plastics is that some plastics are exposed to real nasty toxins. You buy an industrial fuel, automotive material. The plastic is of a particular kind that can withstand the solvents. The different types of plastics can have a profound effect on during burning, what is produced, what is released. And so anytime we enter into a technology that involves polymers that are so diverse, I don't think our technology right now is capable of identifying trace amounts of nasty byproducts from burning plastics. And that poses a big problem, a big risk.
Are there things other than burning of plastic that could also release the toxins in plastic?
I don't, right at this moment, just answering it right away, I'd have to think about it.
Okay. I think that's something else that was another part of this discussion, which I wanted to see us looking into. Are there ways of using plastic now that would be legal under the current policy? Are there ways of using plastic and actually are other forms of waste as well that could cause problems, even if they're not used in a waste to energy, situation?
And also, if we were to allow burning And you mentioned the concern of who knows what they're using in this product in another place.
Right.
Perhaps we have to have monitoring at every stage. And that gets costly,
Mhm.
the regulations and follow up. But it may be necessary. Otherwise, we're gonna have rogue companies doing whatever they damn well please and creating their own stream of pollution.
See, I don't think this is, I want to kind of add at this point in time, I don't think this is currently is a real serious problem for us because, we've got this policy in place. That's gonna stop like 95%, I think, of, of anything that, we would have to worry about. I'm just, it doesn't catch everything, is my question. I don't think it does. I think it catches only, some of the parts, some of the problems. Anyway, that's all I wanted to go into tonight. It's just, if everyone just kind of take that away and think about it some. And I realize I'm terribly unelegant as ever tonight in bringing the issue forward. But I think I somehow managed to, to get out my concerns on it. And I hope we get some answers to that. Yeah.
If I may, one last thing, and I think it was mentioned before, I mean, I really recommend that you guys watch that board meeting. The board spent quite a bit of time, they discussed the pros and cons of all these different options.
What was the date?
Wait a second, and I can send you a link, I know there was some.
I'd appreciate that,
I'll send you the link to the meeting. So, I mean, it wasn't like an automatic yes or no, I mean, they had a lengthy discussion, they covered all the angles. At the end of the day, they voted 5-0 to keep the policy. Staff is not planning to bring this thing again to the board.
Yeah.
We're done with that, they voted. When you guys are focusing on the health impacts, environmental stuff, which makes sense. But the other thing that was also discussed, if you look at this from a zero waste point of view, depending on your definition of zero waste, any kind of incineration is not an acceptable option. When you're incinerating and you hear the discussion, if you watch the meeting, you're destroying the resource as
Right.
opposed to bring it back into the closed loop system.
Right.
So it goes beyond just the health impacts, even though those are important. So,
Yeah.
I mean, watch the meeting. I think you'll get where the board is coming from on this.
Okay. Is there any analysis of a use that, let's say somebody we're gonna put this into this product over here, XYZ, but that XYZ could then be taken somewhere else and burned. I mean, is there any, do you look at it in that way, or, have you?
So, the two companies that were rejected last time, they told us what they were gonna do.
Yes,
They told
yes,
us we're gonna make fuel and.
Yeah.
So if somebody were to build a facility, tell us we're gonna make coffee mugs,
Yeah,
and then we find out that they're making fuel, then we can take them out of the place.
Yeah.
Remember, they're leasing property for us.
right,
So
right.
if they give us false information, that'd be grounds for terminating that lease, which would be a very expensive proposition because these are not cheap places to build. So nobody's gonna do that.
Okay.
We're talking millions of dollars of investment.
I think that plastics, we will eventually come to feel, in terms of challenge, is one of the moonshots that we face existentially. Because there's so much of it, and the amount is increasing so fast, it exceeds the ability for the technology to get control of it. And right now, it's just flying past us, and we're talking policy, but there needs to also be this spectacular amount of technological understanding. It's one thing to produce plastics. It's one hell of a thing to understand what happens to them once we've got them.
Yep.
And that could really, and the fact that it's entering into cells in every place, in the mountains, in the oceans, passing through cell membranes. There's a new term, I don't know if you've heard it, plasticosis. It was used in describing certain seabirds that were consuming large amounts of plastic, and their guts, their stomachs and their intestines were being damaged by the plastic they were consuming. And so that term is now, just look it up, plasticosis. So it's a new medical term. And we're gonna be experiencing plasticosis in our neighborhoods too.
That just prompts me to say one other thing, David, and I hope it in no way it is interpreted as an undermining of your point, because I take your point. The larger issue is EPAC's position on managing plastic generally.
In what way do you mean, when you say generally, what?
Recycle, reuse, refuse. It seems to me that this issue around waste to energy, burning plastic is just one of the issues that surrounds the whole problem of plastics. So I was thinking that a worthwhile discussion might be the management of plastic in the next decade or two generally, with this being just one aspect of it, an aspect that we presently prohibit. So that may be somewhat different from what you're suggesting. It may be too different to be useful. But I agree, it's the existential crisis is real. I got plastic in my bloodstream and everybody else in here does too. And so discussions of what people locally can do, if anything, sounds like to me to be a good use of our time.
Yeah, and I think it's plastic in general is basically the cause of my concern on this. It's not just the burning of it, it's what else we're gonna do with it. We can't at the county level in Florida say to Publix, we're not gonna buy, you can no longer sell anything in your store that is, wrapped in this plastic, container, because it's all, we're all having to pay twice for it and putting it into our landfills and whatever.
I just got the Guardian newspaper, just sent out, just one of the daily feeds that, there are certain companies producing plastics for the food industry that are still, PFASs are still found in. And in Europe, it's outlawed, but in the United States, the EPA, US EPA is suing them. And while they're suing them, these companies still have not changed.
No. Sometimes it's easier for them to pay the fine after the fact than it is to,
Well, it needs to be a big
stop.
enough fine to make them change this.
Yeah, it works. Okay. So let's be looking at that, I think, as an overall subject. I think it's a big issue and it's going to become larger as time goes on. One of the things I was thinking, and just recently, kind of going along with, you're talking about the plasticosis. I had a car which I just recently had to junk, but I had it in the front seat of it. I had some stuff that I put into a white plastic bag that had been sitting in the sun for so long that when I went to pick the plastic bag up, it literally dissolved. Now most people say, "Oh yeah, that's great. He breaks plastic down and it's no longer a problem." But I'm just thinking, oh my, this is like,
Mask on.
it's like, yeah, and an evil spirit was there. Something I couldn't see, I knew was there, that was completely able to avoid the mechanism of this body, defend itself from it. If I breathe, I was gonna get the dust of that plastic bag in my body. And whatever it had in it was, that, don't worry about burning, the sun did that, okay? And the sun did all the burning of that was necessary over time. So, there's other things we need to concern ourselves about as well with plastics. And I just, we take a look at it from every possible side. I don't think we could just continue to let this, slip by us. Or when we do, it's just going to be a bigger, enemy than we can possibly deal with, which I think is already there for some people. How big is the spot in the ocean where there's plastics? I mean, overall,
One of them is the size of Texas, and there's another one that's even bigger.
and of course, that's not a problem because that's out in the ocean. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I think that's how our Congress may be looking at this, because obviously they're not doing anything, and the state legislature is not doing anything. And we as the county certainly can't do anything because we're stopped, from doing things that way. Okay,
We can't regulate, but we can mitigate.
yeah, right.
That's the only.
Yeah, inform, I think
Inform
that's
and
what
mitigate.
informing,
Yeah.
yeah, this is all very informative.
And so what can we do to better inform and to better mitigate? I think is, those are, maybe to boil all this discussion down is, this was our best point.
One goal I'd love to hear, more talk about, petroleum alternatives for plastics made of other materials would solve a lot of problems. And reduce the need, the justification for fossil fuels.
And it can be, I mean, there are ways of doing
They're
that.
already there, they're just not, the economies of scale are not.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think they'll ever get it towards cheaper than the current way of doing it, because taking, the oil, bulk, and using it for free, so to speak, to do that.
Yeah.
Well, this could work out to be a good subject, definitely, there's a lot that could go into it.
Yeah, and I sort of knew it was gonna blow out into other areas like that, which is why I wanted to bring it up, I realized that, the real protection, our ability to use the subject to protect is already gone because it's done what it needed to do in terms of, preventing the use of plastic for waste energy. But are there other problems from that? So at any rate, that was that part of that. Were there any other items we had? We have to go through the work plan and see, did everyone get a chance to read this before coming to meeting?
I did.
You did?
I have not next.
You haven't, okay,
Sorry about that.
okay. Thank you, Gus.
Well, good, see ya.
See you, got it.
Is there another copy somewhere?
Yes, I got some.
Do you have one?
Yes, I got it.
Okay.
And Mark is sitting there saying, boy, am I glad I'm getting out of this. George, did you re-sign up for the committee or no?
What was that?
Did you resign or you?
Yeah, and it looks as though I'm gonna be. Is that true, Mark, that I'm gonna be accepted?
Yeah, you're reappointed according to the memo. we got.
That's what I thought.
Okay, good. I didn't see that, so, yeah.
Yeah,
I just to give you an idea, I had 383 emails yesterday.
really?
Yeah, and they were new for yesterday because the day before that I cleared them all out. So.
Yeah.
And that I admit is more than twice what I usually get.
Huh. Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
I got a question, Mark. And is there any word on what staff is looking at or finding out about the portable air quality meters?
No, I'll get with, Chris Gilbert is their hazmat manager. He said he was checking in on prices. I don't know. I'll talk to someone about it. Didn't Chris Gilbert say he was gonna check on prices for the monitor, air quality monitors, handheld? I guess he'd looked at them before and there was an issue with. But we'll get with that.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, I thought he wanted to come and talk to
So you
us.
want to come and talk to you
Yeah.
about it,
That'd be cool.
yeah. I
Yeah,
think we need to-
Gosh, he does so much, yeah. Well, I got some time to hold him hostage,
Who are we talking about here?
it's all our hazardous waste program manager,
Oh, okay.
so you get the right hazardous waste program. I feel like he does more than that.
Are we discussing?
Where are we here? Sorry, I just went to the bathroom.
Oh, that's
So
fine.
we're on the work plan, we've got the history, the mission statement, everybody's good with that. The major accomplishments, sorry, go ahead, David.
Yeah, goals and objectives, are kind of what I want to look at. I just wanted to say, because, what we did in the past, letting the board know, it doesn't, I think they have a good idea of what we've done, and I think they capture the most important items in there,
Yeah, you did
in the
live
first
it.
part of it. In the second part of this, the goals and objectives, I want to make sure that, I didn't miss anything and they didn't miss anything and all that. The two sections, they had air quality and dark skies put together. I separated that out because I didn't see what dark, keeping lights down had to do with air quality. And the other change I made had to do with the what they said was sustainable agriculture, but which I changed to just agriculture in my signed on version. Of this, because I don't see contributing, it says contribute to the discussion about the Newberry meat processing facility and associated property. And I don't see that as being sustainable agriculture. It's just agriculture in my mind, because of all of the misuse of water, which, you know, eating of meat, you know, and I do time to time eat meat, so I'm not, you know, promoting a vegan lifestyle for everybody, but I'm saying that, you know, eating of meat does cause a misuse of our water.
Yeah.
Because it uses it in such extreme amounts. But from that standpoint, I don't really know, it's in here under agriculture, but. You know, do we at some point in time want to take a deeper dive into the amount of water that's used by this, just so, you know, we can maybe, you know, pass the paper off to the commission saying, here's, you know, when you know, and you know, for what it's worth, I'm for, you know, they're having the meat, you know, the meat processing plant here. Because that meat's going to be eaten anyway right now, and we're saving a lot of transportation and therefore, you know, gases and, you know, going in CO2 going into the atmosphere by allowing it to be locally processed.
I think that because, I mean, I'm a meat eater.
Mhm.
I love all kinds of meat. But I don't think we will succeed in enlightening people enough to make them think twice about eating meat, if that's what your goal is.
My goal in that would be to actually get the people to eat only as much meat as they need. Whereas right now, people generally, you know, are eating 2 and 3 times, and it's not even healthy for them to
Yeah,
eat
but
as much meat.
now that's dictating. I agree with what you believe is important.
Yeah.
But to dictate it to people.
Oh, no, not at all dictate, but just to inform.
Well,
In this case,
yeah.
this is inform the committee or the commission as to when they support a project like this, you know, what are the issues that they are going to bring up in other people, you know, the issues of water usage, the issues of, you know, is it healthy?
So is the topic here, relabeling sticks? Or dropping sticks?
Yeah, actually, yeah,
I think we already did, this must be an older.
this is
version.
an older version,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, that was it. That's why you said in the extra signed off on version, that was changed to
Yeah.
just our agriculture.
I was kind of thinking after our discussion, do we want to look at those solid waste goals and make sure that what we just talked about is rolled up into those goals?
Yeah,
Has
that's
it
true.
already been forwarded, or are we able to make changes still? Or has it been forwarded?
This has already gone to the commission, the entire packet has already gone to the commission.
So what we're doing now is merely creating an internal document? I mean, what are we doing?
This is our plan, okay? So we can do whatever we want to with it. We can
So-
add something to it.
So
if
it's
we want to.
our internal document.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, and I think also this will help with some speaking points, because David is, you know, you saw do we want to pull up, can we share your screen and pull up the presentation or?
I've tried,
Okay.
I tried to pull up but I think, to your question, it's like. The board just kind of brushes it, it's like it's you can tweak it throughout, you know, they just don't want to see situation where, you know. Some advisory committees going rogue and doing something that, you know, is not within their scope of what, you know, they're intended to do.
Is there any rogue stuff in here?
No,
None of it made it through all the levels that made it through.
Okay.
And that's why I made the clarification in the agricultural section that this, you know, because agriculture isn't something that normally is, you know, considered to be concern to the environmental, you know, committee. But,
Yeah, no, that was actually a good change, David, because I mean, we had, in the past, we talked about things that were sustainable agriculture, but you're
yeah.
right, this is just plain agriculture.
Yeah, I didn't get any pushback
Yeah.
on that.
No, I really wanted it to be sustainable agriculture, but it's just
It
agriculture.
wasn't, and I kind of wanted something to be sustainable
Yeah.
agriculture too, but no, it's not gonna happen.
So, I mean, just as my opinion, and I'm just here to facilitate y'all, right? This is your committee. I'm here to take notes, facilitate, things like that. But I mean, it sounds to me like this discussion is gonna be real helpful for David, because a week from, what's that, like a week away.
Week, wait.
Next week,
Next
next
Tuesday.
week he's gonna go up to the commission and give the presentation, and so they ask questions, they're very interested in what we do, and so. I think if anything, going through and kind of discussing and clarifying everything that's in those goals will just, in my opinion, would give all of us speaking points, you know, because we'll be there too. So I mean, it just seems helpful in that respect, and then if we can get the presentation up. you know, for me, when I'm doing a presentation, it helps to see those images and then have that discussion kind of fresh in my mind.
And the slideshow that we got as a handout is what David is going to present.
Yes, sir.
Yes, presentation, yes. And I think I just got that as a PDF, didn't I? Or did I get that, it's a PPF?
Do you want it as a PowerPoint?
I do, because
Yeah.
that's how it's gonna have to go.
Yeah, yeah, and I like to, I was gonna try and look for the PowerPoint to print it too, because I like to print up my PowerPoint presentations and do notes. That way I can do notes for slide and carry those notes with
I
me.
don't know what the date is. We got it.
It's June 13th.
We got it.
Yeah.
As
June
a,
13th is,
I'm sorry, the date.
and it's in the county commission.
Yeah, in the daytime, here, it'd be great for whoever can attend, and I'll make myself a note to send out a reminder, but I mean, if
Yeah, I
many
will-
members, it's could be
I
present.
wanna, I'd like to. do
Yeah,
that.
no, I appreciate
So
that, I'll
this-
send out a reminder.
I'm sorry for not, sort of missing a bunch of things, because I've been doing a lot of stuff at home that dealing with issues. You're gonna be giving a presentation, David, on what, I'm sorry.
It's actually just, it's on it's on this.
Yeah.
Essentially, so,
Our goals and
well, it's the whole thing, I
the
believe. I mean, it should be.
accomplishments and mission, the whole thing.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
what we did and what we're going to do.
They've been hearing from each.
Yeah.
Oh,
Each
okay.
advisory committee every month, and it's kind of a standard format.
Oh, yeah,
They get the work plan, there's a presentation, and it goes with
Yeah.
documents.
And I've done one of these before.
yeah, we've done these
Yeah.
before.
I mean, I've gone and spoken to the board before, presented
And that's
presented
June
it to them.
13th.
But it's not required. If you can send them just you can send them, the PDF of the presentation, and, they can accept that too. They have in the past.
Well, I wanna be there. It's in the beginning.
That'd be great.
What time
Watch
do
me
you
stumble
start?
through my limited vocabulary.
No, what time do you start?
They start at 11:30. Let me see if they're.
When?
They'll put out the agenda on Friday when you send it out as to where it places. So you can kind of get an idea what early on, whether it's in the mid-afternoon, whatever, and I'll just let you know. And people, you just need to go on, they have live stream, and then you just go in there and watch it where it falls on the agenda, so you don't have to sit there and watch everything, to get to it, but. The applicant selection is on consent agenda, so it's approved right off the bat, the presentation. I don't know what they're doing, I don't know if I explained it before, because the board, it's been years, and I know they admit that, I couldn't tell you when, that there have been any presentations to the board from the advisory committees as to what their responsibilities are, what that.
Sort of
activity is doing.
justify their existence.
Right, so they're trying to say, so they're spending like every month this year, they're spending either one or two presentations, and they originally had EPAC for August, but then they switched out with one of the other department, I think
Yeah.
rule advisory committee was like, they wanted to switch that and go to August. So yes, the presentation, this is just draft. It was like, based on just kind of a general overview, and then the resolution in terms of how the EPAC came about, and then it statutorily goes through sunsets and now extended to 2025. And then, some of the major issues that, in terms of the topics that stuff with the zero waste, water quality issues and irrigation, and then the conversation forums that y'all had, and then, but we'll have PowerPoint and anything else that David wants to include, or any of the board, just like, we just wanted to get something to get it in the placeholder for the presentation, to get it on the board agenda. You have to have something to give them, so that, if that's all that's given, then that's, that's fine, but so.
And just so everyone knows, there's two sections on here that I want to discuss before. Did you have something on it?
I was just gonna say, I'm glad to know this is just a placeholder, because, what's on here and what's in our plan, are pretty different.
The plan is, yeah, I mean, this is like supposed to be like what EPAC, the history of EPAC and what
This
they've
is
got
kind
going
of
on.
a-
Just a broad brush approach of what, and really, and talk to Steve, it's like, well, let's kind of like look at what's been done in the last, say, 5 to 10 years, not, obviously there was other, higher, other activities in terms of, whether, Cabot Coppers, various other, projects and stuff. So this was just meant that the overview so that the board members, and you're fortunate in that one of the commissioners, Mary Alford, was on EPAC, and so they pretty much know EPAC. And therefore, it's like Dave's not having to justify
Yeah.
it. They know the role, they know how important it is. And so the work plan is something more just to kind of like, just, again, that they look at and just see if things are going fine. But it was originally discussion to have also the work plan go on the consent agenda. But that doesn't mean that even if it goes to consent, that the board will say, well, we want to talk about it, look at it.
Yeah.
But it's like, but let me pull that up. Dave said he wanted to look at that.
That's helpful, Mark, thank you.
Yeah,
And for what it's worth, as you do, I'm sure, I know every one of the commissioners fairly well, and, personally, so it's not a big issue. There's certainly, I don't see any of them in an adversarial role at all, for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Well, while he's doing that, I'm gonna bring up a couple points here.
which,
The one is, I will probably use the air quality section there,
okay.
where I will very likely use that as an opportunity to elaborate on what, on the recommendation, that we made to the commission on that. Whether, we didn't actually get a chance, I think, to vote on that, but we did discuss it to some extent. Do you mind just kind of going through that, what the recommendation you made?
My recommendation is that, having an official air quality program, that I'm not sure what the funding of it would be, 100,000 or how. It would be a sizable chunk of money invested.
There was a white paper that I think I sent out to y'all, that they were like 3 different options, that they presented. I'll send it out again to the board, like 2 years ago. And I was not even aware about it till, discussion. It was like, and then they said, well, here's the white paper. And it was like, obviously one was like, restart the whole program. And it was like,
Yeah.
big ticket item and stuff. And so, of the 3, and I think the board, they made a decision not to move on any of them, for whatever reasons,
Yeah.
until we can see. But I think I appreciate you mentioning the portable monitors, because that was not an option that anybody considered. And so the fact that that's something that, and they're affordable, so it's not like.
The thing that's spectacular about the whole idea of having a portable is that if you can conceive of a target population of residents living or conducting their lives, bus stops, school environment settings, heavy traffic urban intersections, as opposed to small town people living in small towns or in the country, and then coming into concentrated areas where there's heavy traffic. You could send someone in, collect some data from all 1,000 different locations and settings, and create research proposals, surveys. You can create surveys that expensive fixed air monitors, like the one on 441 or 75, I'm not sure where it is. That doesn't give you much useful information. It gives you an average. As I mentioned earlier, it overrepresents the exposure of country folk, and it grossly underrepresents the exposure of residents within city environments.
Right.
If you're in a heavy stop and go traffic situation on Main Street and University Avenue, or 34, maybe the worst is Newberry or Archer Road and 34th Street.
Right.
The traffic is insane there. I've held many political campaign signs there and all day long and suffered. I couldn't tell what it was, but I assumed it was air exposure to air, the exhaust. But those areas, if you took a meter and measured, you would be shocked at the differences between one location and another. And when you see that graphically or just the numbers, it motivates you to want to do something. And it provides
Yeah, run.
yeah, it gives you something to say, okay, EPA, suck on this. Think
Yeah.
about this. And you can't do that with expensive fixed monitors in one location. Whereas if you have one or more of these things and you one day collect and the amount of data you can collect and put on the cloud and create three-dimensional imaging of exposure in a school environment, parents picking up and dropping off their kids. EPA has an entire document on the siting of schools, the proper location, the fact that children should not be exposed to the exhaust of the drop off and pickup routine that goes on every day. It just, the list is endless about to the exposure that you could measure.
Well, I think I just have a question. So, when you talk about, creating these graphs and everything from the data, is that something that this committee would be able to help out with, or is it
No,
something that
it's-
county staff would do
It's
that?
literally generated with the staff person taking that data. Is the people who use those meters on a daily basis or weekly or monthly, they're the ones who probably should become the resident experts in at least processing the data so that we can all read it.
So that means we're also asking for staff time to process data, not just for the materials.
Well, it may, I don't know, I didn't read enough or find enough about what it takes to process it. But I suspect the software does an awful lot and automate it pretty well.
I think it's automated.
It's not too hard to take data like that and put it into a chart or
Yeah,
a graph
it
or
would-
whatever
it
you
would
want
be
to.
helpful.
Yeah.
And
It would still be just staff time is all. That, I mean, I'm just specifying because I've been involved with similar efforts.
Yeah.
And you have to calibrate the equipment and it does malfunction sometimes, things like
But
that come
it's-
up. So I just want to be clear before it goes to the
yeah,
board.
there's no, it's, there has to be a certain level of technical competence
There you
and
go.
willingness to put time in.
And-
George, is there any experience that we might turn to, for example, are these portable monitors? Do they have a tradition of having been used in
Oh, yeah.
Baltimore or
Yeah,
someplace?
I don't have that, but I can tell you that the companies selling these advertise them as appropriate for regulators, government regulators and environmental hygienists. So these are the people, the EPA is a government, regulator, the DEP technically should be able to use them and rely on them. They're designed to have the level of accuracy. They're not toys and they're not for hobbyists or,
Yeah.
they're for government. So they probably have, their data is probably credible.
The reason, I didn't ask the question very well. If there were an issue around personnel costs, resources to have a program like this. Are there communities in the United States where those data might be available? For example, you have to have a full-time person to process the data or display the data or analyze the data.
That
or-
probably could be answered partly by the company, and they probably have links to communities using or states using these devices.
If
That we
if
can then,
Yeah, if we had some numbers, not only about their validity,
Right.
reliability and that, which I
The
think
co-
you
yeah.
have attested to, but also the expense of a program that might be reassuring.
Right,
Or
yeah.
at least it would give people a better basis for voting yay or nay.
George, can you look into that and see if you can put something together,
Yeah.
so paper that you
I
can,
will, I'll, if I can, I will contact the company and ask them for things, links that I can inquire and talk to people perhaps
can you have something maybe by next month?
next month.
Yeah.
I don't see why not.
Okay, can you add that to our agenda for next month?
Sure.
Thank you.
The July,
That's, by the way, what I was talking about when I was saying we don't usually do this up front. We do it, at the end of the meeting, or as we go. Good idea.
yeah, I realized that was awkward, like I said, I had to kind of put it in a weird place for poor Gus has been at that commission meeting all day today.
By the way, I'd like to point out that I've been trying to get air quality section, I think there's always one in there, at least, at least in part in our work plans, but a number of years ago, this is when they were having a cement plant, the Newberry cement plant was coming out. The county, I think, was against having it, and they were voting it down, saying, we're not gonna give you zoning for it, whatever, even though it was over there in Newberry, I guess. It was, I don't, is it actually in Newberry, in there, within their district, within the town district?
Sorry, the process.
The cement plant. I don't know if it's within the town, they've expanded their, what's now Newberry about 10 times over since then. But at that time, I think the county did have some say in what happened, and they were gonna vote it down. And the state then came in, and they essentially said that of all the counties in Florida, Alachua County is prohibited from passing any regulation to,
And you
protect
know
the
why
air.
that is? Because Kirkpatrick at the 11th hour.
Yeah.
In some, one of the state meetings. Called in the debts that he had accumulated from people over the years, and my neighbor Cynthia Chestnut was on the state, I guess she was in the House, I forget. I don't know, I guess Kirkpatrick was a senator, but all I know is that she must have been a senator, because she voted in favor of denying home rule in Alachua County. And
Yeah.
I caught her one day in a rainstorm, and we all had to find shelter in the same spot. And I said, how could you do that? And she said, she's, I didn't give her a chance to initially, I told her, you constantly talk about your concern about children and the health and well-being of children. Guess who is the resident the most vulnerable to PCBs and dioxins? It's the fetus.
And mercury, a ton of
And I
mercury that
said,
comes out of that plant.
Well, I had read an article in the New England Journal of Medicine by a guy named Jacobson that addressed PCBs and followed students from early childhood into their teens and looked at it in the most minute, spectacular way. It was just incredible. And I said, I said, they found deficits, cognitive deficits as a result of exposure. And you voted for this. She said, well, and she threw her hands up like, I didn't know. I said, well, why didn't you? Why didn't you spend the time to listen?
She's still your neighbor?
She is, and we're having a contentious thing about a wall between us right now, literally a wall. Yeah.
Stand your ground.
So
Oh, yeah.
that's something I want everyone to be aware of as we go into discussions about, what we can do about our air and, but this county has really no say in anything, even if we do find that, we have 3-year-olds dropping dead, on street corners or whatever. I mean, we're not gonna be able to do anything about that legally here within the county. There's something the county will have to approach the state to do something about, which they're not likely to. But if we have some good scientific evidence that we're having what is considered even by their standards to be, a level of pollution, which is not tolerable, not acceptable.
But again, we can't regulate, but we can mitigate, which is why when
And
I
we can enforce.
last time talked about air particulates,
Mhm.
one of the things I mentioned was that there are some things that Tufts University in their studies, they transformed the EPA's view on a lot of things pertaining to particulates. And the CAFE standards were a result of Tufts. And they found that sound barrier walls, the very tall ones along highways.
Yes.
Actually, in Boston, served effectively to reduce exposure to ultrafine particulates. It doesn't make any sense to me how that. You think ultrafine particulates could climb over and they'd be, but apparently they were very effective. And they also found the US Department of Transportation, for some reason, did a study, and they found that certain kinds of trees that we can't grow in Florida that are found in California are very effective for reducing particulates. And Tufts also found that there were these window air conditioner sized air cleaning devices that serve to reduce I think 35%, which is really not enough. Particular exposure in people living in apartments extremely close to the highways in Boston. That was Tufts did this incredible study.
George, if you're coming to that meeting next week,
Yeah.
just let me know if you're there, if I don't see you right off the bat, just because.
June 12th, 13th.
Yeah, because if I do bring this subject up and there's any questions on it, I may point to you.
I'll try, yeah.
Because you do it so much better than I do.
David,
Yes.
in our goals and objectives, were we gonna wish that we had mentioned solar power? Or renewable energy in some form?
Are we? Is it,
We haven't mentioned it,
no, we haven't.
and it's, as you know, an ongoing
Yeah,
issue in the county,
Yeah.
in the city. So I'm just wondering, the reason I didn't bring it up before is I was unsure about bringing up things this late.
Mhm.
But since this is an internal document, I would like at least to have a discussion of why, if we're not going to identify that as a potential topic, why we're not doing that, because it seems to me to be one of the burning issues of.
Okay, let me ask you this, and I'm being strictly, what's the word, devil's advocate kind of question?
Devil's advocate.
Why do we need to discuss solar power?
I don't know, I guess because of its influence as an alternative to fossil fuels and the benefits that would accrue to making a transition from fossil based to renewable energy and the impacts of that change on water, soil, health, heat, climate, those things.
Okay. I'm wondering, and this is just, just me, I'm wondering how much we'll actually have or be able to say about that matter as time goes on here. For one, the GRU being taken over by a governor appointed board, who, and forgive me, I don't know if this is an accurate statement or not, but I see that as being a step in the direction of selling GRU, going from public to private, that sort of thing.
If the criterion is whether or not we're gonna have any influence, then there are lots of things on here that we have scant influence on. I guess I don't see not having an influence as a criterion, one.
Agreed,
But I would also argue that there are all kinds of issues that are Alachua County centric.
Yeah.
That we could potentially weigh in on.
Yeah. I mean, it would be nice if we could move away from, with this now, with the amount of money that's going to move, from the public's hands, back into the private, stockholder, hands. The more people that have solar, the less people are going to be beholden to that and, be more livable. But, and obviously there's an environmental side of that, because in everything we look at, we have to look at the environmental impact of that. I've never thought of looking at a subject though, based upon the the positive impact it has, taking away from the negative impact of things that we know we have, okay?
Can you explain that?
Yeah, in this case, you know, promoting the use of solar is going to, you know, obviously, if you're using, your energy is coming from solar panels, it's not gonna be coming from, you know, a fossil fuel. And so therefore, you're cutting back on the negative effect of the fossil fuels. Now, typically, we would focus on the negative effect of the fossil fuels, say why somebody's doing something is putting, you know, pollution into the water or air or, you know, the land or whatever. But what we're saying now is, what we're gonna focus on is the other part of that, is the solar, you know, part, which is saying, here's what's good, and it's cutting down, here's why you wanna use this instead of that, okay? You see what I'm getting at? In other words, you're focusing on the positive side of something, as, you know, to highlight what it does and, you know, eliminating the negative side. It maybe that's how to approach solar energy. Maybe that's what needs to be done.
Well, I would vote to put renewable energy in some form on this list of goals.
Okay. Why don't we discuss that next month too? Okay, so, because that's something, you know, as we're starting off, we'll have new members, starting off the year, so to speak, with that. And we can add on that item and discuss how we want it in there, so, I guess the topic should read, add renewables. Single words, fine, renewable energy, yeah, add renewable energy as item 8 on our goals and objectives. But without any detail, right? Or you want to just put solar power, you can just put solar.
Well,
Solar energy.
renewable energy captures it,
Yeah.
just like agriculture.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk about a biggie.
Yeah, renewable energy,
Yeah.
yeah. Although there's, I'm talking about at least one bullet item under something's probably good, so. Yeah, let's just go ahead and put solar power under that, renewable energy.
Just one category.
Yeah, it should have at least one. We can always, you know, talk about more than that. I mean, that's all these are. The topic itself is what's important, you know, the items that are under the topic are, you know, we can debate those and add or subtract, you know, however we want to. It's just those major topic items there. It's not in this. You're right. Okay. All right. It'll be fun next week. What else to do? Catch up on stuff here. That's
So
fine.
any other comments on the presentation then? Just gonna,
Well, no, I haven't really
you
yet
want a
gotten to the
PowerPoint?
presentation, because I'll have to figure out how to give a present. To me, the important thing to communicate to the board is what we're going to be doing and kind of what we've been doing, where we're gonna go with this. You know, and then why we chose these items and how we chose them, with some elaboration on, especially on the air quality one. I think that's an important one, because we can do something about that still by highlighting it, by you know, quantitatively measuring, you know, whatever, you know, the situation is, and at least getting a baseline for it. It may not be this year that's too useful to us, but in coming years, I think having a baseline will be important, if not critical.
Well, I had something, as you know, is a pet project for Mary, all for two, so, you know, she was the one that prompted.
And water quality probably doesn't have everything we would, you know, it's just an idea of getting everything. It's kind of like having you know, a topic overhead to catch it. You know, it doesn't seem so important to have anything about the HPS2, you know, plant anymore. But, you know, I know that the old man has about $20 million or so invested in land, or what do you call it, options, in mining options. So, you know, I'm not sure he's given up 100%. They may just be deciding where they're going to come from on this all again. And I don't think it's too wise of us if we just completely forget that. So I'm kind of taking the idea on the same approach to that. And the one thing that didn't get into this one that I always got into and got into past was the discussion of the what was the name of that area that had, you know, what is it, what was the one that was declared a national site for pollution? They scooped all the earth and took it away and all that. Forgive me.
Coopers.
Yeah. Coppers, yeah, Coppers, that one. This is the first year, you know, that I haven't actually put it, you know, in there, and that was. I think that's, something that needs to be kept even now, I think it's something we should be considering, because is it really, if we've really, dotted every I and crossed every T regarding that? I'm not sure we have, but this last thing that they did where they were digging in the ground and, putting in a barrier to stop, that was an incredible, but we never were updated on that project.
That's something I
Evaluation.
requested Chris Gilbert to
Huh?
give you, and they need to give an update to the DOCC as well. So Chris Gilbert will be presenting something we just tell him when, a presentation on the update on what's been going on with the remediation.
Can we get something in our next agenda, just so it carries it forward?
Yeah,
Ask about that, and then,
Because I mean, every month, it's like, yeah, we really need something there.
yeah, put that every month on our
Since you're gonna have,
agenda. Yeah.
New board members coming on board, new committee members that
Yeah.
are probably not familiar with it. So I think that's a good idea if you can get that on next month.
Yeah.
One way we may be able to, regarding coppers, remember they used a beta tested substance to infiltrate inject into the ground to prevent movement toward the well field. I wonder if other places have used similar materials and what if there's anything to report on that stuff.
Yeah, I'll ask Chris, what that condition was, and as Gus, somebody's not gone, but he would actually know as well with that. He was originally managing the project, but yeah, they did put a chunk of change in putting a retaining wall below grade, to kind of stop some of that flume, so.
But it was beta tested and never an absolute proven
Right.
technique, which, and it's a product that Coppers was manufacturing, I think.
God, I didn't know that.
Absurd.
I didn't know that. Well, I think that in this case, just getting an update in terms of what the measurements now, what are they getting downstream of this, and that was,
Right.
because that was the whole goal, was to cut the downstream flow. But it was actually happening under the ground, under the surface. Okay, have we hit everything in here that everyone wants to talk about?
You did everything I want to talk about.
And everything you didn't want to talk about? We hit everything you didn't want to talk about, then we've gotten it all, so. Okay, I think we're done. Christopher, thank you. We hope we see you next month.
So we adjourned at 7:55. Look at that, ahead of schedule.
All right.
It's a June
Thanks all.
June 13th.
13th.
Well, said June.
Oh, yeah, I wrote
Really
it.
send you a reply.
Yeah, no, yeah, that too, yeah.
Sounds like the agenda gets finalized on
Friday.
the Friday before, so I'll send you something, but well, I guess that's not that far away, so you would get
No.
something shortly.
Well,
You would give me something shortly.
And Mark,
That's my line.
Mark and Summer, I want to thank you very much. You guys did a great job.
Thank you, Dave.
I can't say that enough, especially when you consider the hell I put you through.
No, I appreciate it. It's been a while since we had a work plan, so it
Mhm.
worked out really well. So it was a good timing to kind of, Gina provided some kind of different little
Yeah.
format, so that worked out well. I think you got a good plan, so.
Yeah, I do too. It's excellent, excellent.
Good.
Ah,
Are we done?
oh, we're done.
Cheers.
Yep.
Thank you all very much. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Bye.
You too.
Bye.
Next time.
Take care of yourself.
I had this student notebook since the 1970s, and I'm still writing in it.
Yeah.
And
How have you not building? How have you not
Well,
built yet? I
I
haven't
know,
built
and
it.